My name is Rongo i Keene. Everyone calls me Rongo, but I'm also known as the Warrior. I was adopted at a young age, and we were brought up on a farm in Hawke's Bay in Mohaka. And I was whāngaid out, adopted by Peter and Olin Hawkins, and they adopted a few of us, and we're all around the same age, probably about, I think there was about 5 of us, and we're all around the 9-10.
You know, we didn't have money, not enough, you know, the farm didn't, financially it wasn't, you know, we couldn't live off it financially, so, and there were a lot of them. There was 6 here,
I don't know, we did
10 there,
well,
plus 4 of his other sister's kids, and we all just sort of made it. We had a big garden.
I think our hearts are so big we didn't see anything, you know, it was just love for everyone.
And you had to work and help each other. It was like back in the old days.
So we were brought up on the farm, and we were brought up, you know, to work hard, and to pretty much our whole upbringing was if you want something, you have to work for it.
Everyone had to. It was expected of you too.
Yeah. If we had jobs, everyone sticks together.
And that was a humble upbringing that we had. You know, the closest shop to where we were was about 45 minutes drive to Wairoa. So, you know, we were brought up with no shops. We were brought up in the country. We learned to live off the land. So my upbringing was, I say tough, but at the same time I say humbling. You know, you learn the values of things, you know. We didn't have everything every other kid had. We had to work for what we had. And I found having an upbringing like that has helped me later on in life, you know. There was a bed down the back, so my 2 bros sat here. We had a fireplace, and far out memories. These are all the college pictures. Some of them are wrecked, but you can still sort of see. I don't know what's going on with that hairdo, guys. They used to be in back in the days, apparently. Yeah, I used to fit in here back in the day. Now I can barely walk sideways in here, but this was us, you know, we were happy. On the farm, you know, we were quite into martial arts growing up, you know. Our whāngai parents put us through martial arts, which me and my brothers did really well. We competed for New Zealand and came over to Australia, and came over a few times actually, and yeah, had a good run with the Australians, and I actually walked away with a few titles. Back in my teens, you know, I was a lot smaller and faster then, but I did all the martial arts, and we also played good rugby.
He used to do the weights and that, but he never really pushed them to do it until they were ready, because he always told them that their bodies were still growing, they're still developing, but he showed them the basics.
But we used to do a lot of running.
A lot of running and work. The work was what kept you fit.
There's 2 hills, we used to make them run that one, and run that one, and then this home straight. I said to him, if I catch you, I'll kick your ass.
So they were bolting.
Booted,
and by the time he came past the kitchen window, he'd be crying because he had to boot it. Crying, and then when he caught him, he just...
It's funny, it was funny. But also, they see the funny thing too, they give me shit.
So me and my brothers played great rugby growing up, and I think that's where, you know, it all began really, you know, the sporting mixed with the upbringing, you know, sort of set the boundaries for my life that I'm living today really. I moved from New Zealand to Kalgoorlie, I think I was 18, which was about 12 years ago. I can't give you the exact date. Moved over straight from the freezing works, straight to Kalgoorlie, and got into the mines here, man.
You know, work is work, so outside of work, we don't take it home, you know. He's their mate after work, but we run our work like it's a family business, you know. So we're pretty flexible when it comes to work. He's very encouraging. He's always made opportunities for a lot of friends and family that have no skill base or nothing at all. He's always given them a go, given them a chance, because he's known what it's like to come from nothing. So he's he's a really good role model.
I think I've been in the industry for a few years now, and the crew that I have, you know, we've been working together for years. You know, for example, I'm still out there working with the boys, but because I've got a bit fatter, you know, I can't really climb up the scaff anymore, you know, so now I'm just used to walk gear around because I can carry a whole bunch of gear. So, you know, it's about finding that balance, but man, I've got a great team on, and I know you'll all be laughing when you see this, but it's the truth, you know. The bigger I've got, man, I can't go climbing bloody towers anymore, and the boys get upset because the thing's shaking around, which is fair enough. But I've got a great team, you know, around. I actually didn't know nothing about the sport, you know, and when I moved to Australia, I started scaffolding, and I noticed straight off the bat that I was actually quite strong, and stronger than normal because I could lift a little bit more than everyone else. But as everyone goes through the stage, you know, you go to the gym and you were taught that all you needed was a big chest and big arms. So we used to just go down and bash around in the gym, me and the boys, and just, that's all we did. Never did deadlift, never did legs, you didn't need that. You know, everyone just wanted to see big arms and a big chest. So I did that for a few years here in Cal, you know, mixing work and trying to gym, and at the same time trying to live, because I moved in when I was 18, so I was quite young, still trying to learn life. And it wasn't until a few years later we heard of a guy that was in town that used to do a strongman and used to be very strong, and it caught my attention, and I was, oh, okay, this guy. So I hunted him down, heard of this guy, and the boys were talking about him. So I hunted him down, and he was actually working on the pub doors. And he was just new to town. He'd just come to town for the same thing, work experience and stuff. And he went by the name of Kyle Whitehall. And if people don't know Kyle Whitehall competed at the world's strongest man level back in the day. And he was here in Kalgoorlie. And didn't know much about him, didn't know much about the sport. I went up to meet him. He was working on the doors, and me and the boys were out having a few drinks. Walked up to him, I said, oh, hey man, heard you're a strongman or something. Can you take us for a train?
Or if I could show him a few things, and I said, nah, I'm not really interested. I've retired, and I'm not really, keen. And so he got, oh, okay.
And pretty much he just laughed at me. He just pretty much laughed at me and looked at me like, oh, who's this guy? Oh yeah, it sort of shrugged me off, and I was like, oh, okay. Time passed, and I said, nah, I'm gonna go and hunt this guy again. So I hunted him down again. He wasn't at work this time. And I said to him, oh, I'm really interested in getting into the sport strongman.
He kept on asking me, and I was like, okay, well, meet me at this time, and I'll be down at your gym, and we'll see how we go from there.
He sort of looks at me, and we had a little conversation, and then he said to me, all right then, I'll give you a go. Told me a time I had to meet him at the gym, and I went down to meet him at the gym, and wow, that's where it started. You know, from the day I met him, from the day we started training, that's when my whole vision of strength and the sport of strongman, it changed, you know, for good reasons.
He's quite cheeky, you know, and I said, I'll see how this guy goes, and we trained, and he did pretty well.
I keep telling everyone the same story, you know. He met me at the gym, you know, and we started training.
For probably about 3 months, or...
And I say to everyone that I meet, he thrashed me for a good month. You know, I didn't ask questions. I didn't say, I didn't say anything. But he thrashed me for a good month. I was never late. I never passed the training. But after a month of hard training, and I'm telling you, hard training, he looks at me and then he says to me, all right, we can start training now.
Months, I just said, oh, well, look, you know, it's time to get serious. And he was looking at me, I was like, I thought we already trained seriously. Nah.
And I look at him and say, what?
Yeah, I trained him the whole year, and I just busted his ass, and yeah.
And I laugh about it now. Back then I was scratching my head saying, what the hell? You know what I mean? But I laugh at it now because that was his introduction to see if I was worth training, if I was committed, if I was willing to go that extra mile. You know, any normal person would have went, what the hell, and walked out. Honestly, some of the stuff he made me do, but I never asked the question. I just said, all right, let's do it.
I knew he had something, you know, and
So that was my introduction to strength, man. You know, I had a great base from scaffolding all my life, but I didn't know how to lift things properly. So we spent the first 2013 prepping my body, pretty much, and it was actually Kyle that was pushing for my first comp, you know, and Kyle sort of said to me, oh, we're still not ready.
I wanted him to do well, but usually your first competition is just to try it out, see if you like it, and yeah, if you see yourself doing well, just keep the consistency up, you know.
So I think we did our first comp, which was New Zealand Strongest Man 2014. That was 2014 was my first comp, and I still remember it like it was yesterday. You know, it was crazy, and I was nervous. Most people go into a novice comp and, you know, start there, but Kyle had in his mind that, you know, I can keep up, I can do this, and he believed in me. And him believing in me, he said, all right, let's do it. So we trained hard and we went to our first comp in 2014, and I think I placed 4th, my first comp. 4th place I think I came, yeah. There's so many things that can be thrown at you in a competition, different events and stuff like that. You know, you have to be ready for anything. You have to be strong across the board. You just can't be strong at a certain thing. With Strongman, many comps you go to, they could have you doing a truck pull, they could have you lifting a stone, you know. Kyle's always said to me, to be a good strongman, you need a good base. And a good base is pretty much a good bench, a good overhead press, a good deadlift, and a good squat. If you've got a great base, then you've got a great base to work with. Because to be a strongman, you have to play with the events. You have to be constantly testing yourself on technique and everything. For example, most comps these days, strongman comps have an Atlas stone pickup. If you don't practice lifting that stone, you're going to go to comp and not going to do as well as you can. You know what I mean? If they've got a yoke, you've got to practice that. So you've got to put just as much time in focusing on your main lifts as you do putting into time on events. You know, like I said, I'm a strongman. That's what I do. I don't go and do anything but that, you know what I mean? So my training throughout the week consists of weightlifting and strongman events training, because you've got to be strong across the board, like I said before. You can't just be a good overhead presser, because that's not going to win a strongman competition. Usually each comp has 5 events. If you go in knowing you're going to win 2 events and lose the rest of the 3, you're not going to win the competition. You get what I mean? I was hooked on the sport before my first competition. I think the reason I got hooked on the sport because it was challenging. You know, every training was different. Everything we went in and did was not normal. You know what I mean? It was a challenge to lift a stone. It was a challenge to pull a truck. It was a challenge to lift something awkward. That's what hooked me. You know, being able to test your body in ways that you shouldn't be able to test yourself. Push yourself beyond limits that you couldn't, you know, you don't usually push yourself. That's when I got hooked. I think it's a drive to become better. You know what I mean? So after my first competition, we went back to the drawing board, and every comp I've done, I've learned something. Whether it's positive, whether it's negative. But every time I compete, I want to walk away with something that I need to work on, because that's what makes a good athlete, you know, learning from your mistakes. So after New Zealand Strongest Man, we got back to the drawing board, and then we went to, we spent a bit of time training, sorting out a few things. We had a lot of issues to sort out. From there, we went and did, I think we did a few little comps, but I think we went for WA Strongest Man. I think I did qualify for WA Strongest Man, did well in that, which qualified me for the finals. I then went to the finals and won WA Strongest Man 2015. After WA Strongest Man 2015, I went over to Melbourne and competed for the Mass Wrestling title for Australia. I won that. After that, I went to, me and Cole sat down and we decided to do something out of the ordinary, and we decided to go over to Singapore to do the Singapore Strongman series. We went over, we trained hard for it, and I came away with first place for that, which was awesome because the amount of work we put in to do that and to get the result, you know, was good for myself and for Kyle, for all the hard work we put into that. After Singapore, we decided to go and do the Australian log lift titles, 2015. We went there and I pressed 170 kg log, which won the competition for me and was a personal best for myself because I think I remember the New Zealand Strongest Man 2014. I think my first log I did was maybe 140, if even that, you know what I mean? So that was a goal for me because I love to overhead press. You know, everyone that knows me knows that I love it. It's my favourite event. And to do that much work and get that result in that amount of time, you know, showed to myself that, you know, I can do this. You know, if I put the work in, I can get the results. So that was a highlight for me, winning the log comp. After the log comp, because we won WA Strongest Man, we qualified for Arnold's, Australian Arnold's Amateurs 2016, which was going to be probably the biggest show that I'd been a part of since I've started my career in Strongman. So me and Coach Cole sat down, we got a game plan together, and we put a good 3 months into prep for Australia's Arnold's, and went over there, went over confident because I'd put the work in, and turned up on the day, did the business, and I walked away with first place heavyweights, which was today is one of my biggest achievements for the sport so far. And again, that was a highlight because of the hard work I put in to get to that stage, you know, in the short amount of time that we had. Still buzzing over that competition, you know, every comp I do, I'm always, you know, I always reflect back. And I was invited by Jordan Biggie Steffens and the Strength Syndicate crew to go over to Adelaide and be a part of their crew called the Record Breakers in Adelaide, which was an amazing show. So I went over there to go for a good log, where I was going up against big Luke Reynolds and Colin Wolfe, who were all going to go head to head in a log lift, which was really exciting because, you know, Luke Reynolds and Colin Wolfe are big names in the sport. You know, and for me to be even invited to go up against them, for me, was you know, was an honour. So that's where I am today. The last comp I've done, which was Adelaide Records Breakers 2016, and since then I've just been head down, ass up. You hear of a lot of people, especially a lot of the greats. You know, they say, you know, there's the grassroots of training, which is the reality. Where when I first started, I was still working in the mines a lot. You know, I was still going out doing 10, 12-hour shifts, 12-hour days, shift work. And then having to find the courage to come in here and train. Those were the hard days because no one wants to go and train after a 10-hour shift, especially working in the mines when it's 40-degree heat, you know. No one wants to do that. But because I was passionate about the sport and because I loved it, I found time to do it. You know, that's where the hard part is, especially going to work all day, then going to train for a couple hours. I go home and I've only got an hour with my kids before they go to bed. I've only got a few hours with my family. That's where it was tested, you know, that's where the hard things are. And even now, it's still hard, but it's not as hard as it used to be. But that's where you find the balance, you know. That's where I said you've got to find the balance in life, where work, family, and training. It took me years to figure that balance out, and I'm still trying to figure it out now. But it's something that when you do find that balance, you know, everything moves smooth as, everything's great, and everyone's happy. That's the main thing. Everyone's happy. You know, a lot of people doesn't see what happens behind the scenes, you know. How much time you actually put into training, how much time you actually spend away from your family.
Comes to work and business, his work ethic is just next level, you know. He will work till he's had it, like he's not lazy at all. Well, he can't be at the sport, you know. Like if you want to get to that level, you've got to go above and beyond, which he has always done. And it's proven like in his work, it's, yeah.
And just, yeah, how much time in general you put into something, eh? And for myself, you know, if I didn't have the support that I do, I couldn't, you know, do what I do, honestly. And that's the big part of it, you know. And a lot of athletes out there would know what I'm talking about, you know, trying to balance life with training, because when you get to a competitive stage where, you know, you sort of get a good, you know, get up in the ranks, you can't go to comps with excuses. You can't turn up and say, oh, I had a shit month last week training. You know, that's no excuse. You've got to turn up your best, your very best. So you have to try and work things out around you, surround yourself with people, you know, to make it happen. My partner Ange, and my two sons On and Shaquille. Wow, where do I start? She supported me from day one, you know, and she's been there from the very start of it all, really. And honestly, she's the reason why I can do it, you know, because when I've had a hard training, you know, when I can't do much, she's always there picking up the work, you know. She's always there with the kids. She's doing pretty much all the work, honestly. Yeah, and like I said, there's heaps of other people out there that know what I'm talking about.
But he's got a very understanding partner, and his kids love it. Like his kids come down for training, you know, they're part of it. And all of it is for them. Like if he didn't have them around, that it just wouldn't be worth it.
Where the support she gives lets me fulfill what I want to do. You know, there's always someone in the background doing everything and she's it, you know, and without her, none of this would happen. And at the same time too, without her, none of this matters, you know, because without her, I couldn't be where I am now or be where I'm gonna go. And when you look around my gym, you know, I've put motivational things all around. You know, I've got the best of the best here. Up on the walls, the greats, you know. Every comp I've done, I've got shirts up. The reason I put those shirts up because, to me, that's history. You know, I look back at that and I say, I remember how much hard work I did to get that. You know, I remember how much I had to do to get that. That's why they're there. So when I'm in here training and I don't feel like training, I look up and say, well, if I'm not training, someone else is training. That's what my coach has always said to me. He said, if you're not out there training, someone else is training harder and they're going to win, that's the honest truth. So that's why I've surrounded myself with all these positive things.
I remember he was sitting there and I felt, well, this guy's going to go to the top. You know, this is what I preach about. People doing what you desire to do, because once you find that desire in your heart, go and do it, because you'll succeed. The only thing that stops us from succeeding in anything is just bad stuff that's happened in our lives.
Man, I'll stay with you until you get to your dream, you know, and then you know, you should be alright then, you know. So I always promised him, man, I'll never leave you until you get to where you want to go.
He's an inspiration to a lot of us over here, especially I'm probably an inspiration back to people back home in New Zealand as well. But here in Kalgoorlie, I mean, he got involved in a few things where, you know, he's sort of just out of being wrong or being himself. There was an incident, I think it was at the start of the year, where he stopped some guy from stealing something from a shop, and it ended up on YouTube, ended up being on just about every social media here over in town. But you know, a lot of people follow Rongo through Instagram and his pages, but some of the things to do from such a little town like Kalgoorlie, you know, there's only about 30,000 people here, but for someone like Rongo to be competing, you know, across back in New Zealand and over in Perth with some of the Strongman events, Strongest Man lifts, especially the Arnold Amateur Classic, which was on earlier in the year for someone from a small town like Kalgoorlie to actually take that out and beat some pretty good competitors there as well. It's huge. And he's only an inspiration to more people. You know, you see, obviously some of you have seen pictures of him with being a family man. It's a big deal to me as well, because obviously, you know, you don't just do it for yourself. Sometimes you've got to be selfish and actually put the training in for yourself and take your time and sacrifice from your family. So having that kind of, I suppose, commitment, but also getting the support from people like myself and other business owners around town, yeah.
So when I come in here, or wherever I go, wherever I'm training, wherever I'm competing, you know, I'm there to compete. I'm there to do a job, because I've put the hours in here and I've taken the hours away from my family. You know, I've done the hard yards. Let's go there and get the job done. That's number one. So I get away with my family as much as I can. Get out of Kalgoorlie for a bit. We usually go on holidays and stuff like that. So family's number one. If I'm not with the family, I'm usually out with the boys, and we usually go out riding on Harleys and stuff like that. Being in the desert, it's like clockwork. So boys go to work, come home. And there's a lot of Polynesians and Māori brothers here in Kalgoorlie, and we all get together and we ride, man. And because we're in the desert, the roads go for miles. So you can jump on one road and it goes straight for miles. So that's something we like to do in our downtime. All the boys get together and we ride. You know, we are a breed of warriors, you know what I mean? And we were brought up, you know, knowing we were warriors. You know, even as young, going through, you know, kohanga, going through the kapahaka, going through college and stuff, So we always, it's in our DNA, you know. So me in the sport of strongman, you know, I see that as me being, I am a warrior of the sport, you know what I mean? There is something inside me that strives me for excellence, you know what I mean? Our people are a strong breed. I'm still new to the sport, okay? I've only been in the sport for a good 3 years. I'm still new to the sport. I've still got a lot to learn, but I'm willing to do that, you know what I mean? I'm willing to put the time in to do it. You know, everyone's got a goal, everyone's got a dream. You know, my dream's to get to the top. That's everyone's dream, but that's my dream. You know, I've set goals all throughout my career so far. Every goal I've set, I've achieved, you know? And I believe with the team I've got around me, and the vision that I have and the hard work that I do put in, man, I'm going to get to the top. It might take me years, but I know, I can see it in my mind that, you know, I'll get there one day. You know, I believe I'm on a journey, you know. I'm on a great journey.